All right. So, something happened in the previous stream, and my camera went back, or my scene went back to the wrong scene in which you weren't able to see my screen. So, here I am redoing the live session for today to make up for the fact that that happened. So this time around, I figured it out. I'm using a whole bunch of devices here just so that I can keep up with what's going on in the chat room. Because had I known what was happening in the chat, I would have caught that much sooner. I'm not sure what key I might have hit by accident that made that happen, but it's all it's all part of the learning curve. So little things I had mentioned in the previous stream, which I'll have to mention again. Um, I'll be streaming consistently on Tuesdays and Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Except today we're pushing it to 9, or we're redoing this one at 9. And I'm also going to be doing it Saturdays at 10:30 a.m. So Tuesdays and Wednesdays will be following up from each other. And Saturdays will be more of a standalone sort of session, but it'll all be focused around this project, which I announced and will be featured in its own video coming up very soon. So with that, I'm gonna redo what I had done previously, basically looking at the composition and the lighting for the opening quote scene for the comic book. So let's get right into it, or right back into it. So this time I've clicked on the correct scene here. Hopefully we can keep that going. All right. So first things first, I'm going to change this into the proportions that it should be. So I'm going to rotate this over here, change the format to the amount of resolution that I would want for an 8.5 by 11. So that is 2550 for the X and 3300 for the Y. Now, right away, I'm going to split off into two screens so that I can see ultimately what is happening over here on the left-hand side, and so that I can mess with what's going on the right side for the actual render, right? I'm actually going to flip this. I'm going to keep the camera on the left side so I can see the render over here, and I'm going to mess with it in 3D over here on the right side. So first thing I want to do is move these two closer to camera. I can get a bit more depth out of them that way. It'll just look a bit more distorted versus it being further away. I'm also going to change both of these to be full on caps. So go ahead and do do it all caps. Just tends to look better that way for this type of thing. Every act of and is first. Okay, I'm gonna bring that down. So I'm gonna keep playing with my thirds. So everything's gonna kind of be a bit more centered off this time around. So a bit more compact. Keep that one just above the thirds line here and keep this one just above the thirds line there so that I can put creation towards the middle. I'll get rid of that duplicate for now. Also put creation into full caps and get rid of destruction, move destruction lower, and also make destruction full caps. Great. So ultimately, I'm going to stylize creation and destruction to create a composition, but what I'll be doing in a future session is handwriting these letters. So I can then apply all the materials and the sort of stylized effects that I'll do in this session to those words. I'll apply that to a handwritten type that I will convert into an SVG file, bring into here, and essentially apply all those edits that I'm going to do to it to that as an object. So since I've moved these letters closer to camera, And I've had to scale them down to make them fit. Kind of bring that right there. Actually, that's pretty nice on the amount of depth that it has. Maybe I want to make this one. Make sure I can keep it on the same area. So right there, make sure they're about the same size. All right. Next up, I'm going to change the font. So in order to do that, I'll select this one, go over to the right side to the object data properties, bring that down here. I see it's on B font. So I'll open up a new font. So when I hit that folder right there, it'll open up to where all my fonts are installed. And I will go ahead and search for the one I plan to use. Last session, I used Montserrat Medium. I think I might actually try out Roboto. Roboto is not in this folder. It is in a different folder. If you bear with me while I go there. And since I have to redo this, and those are the two fonts that I use for my branding, is Montserrat and Roboto Condensed Bold. So previously I used Montserrat, which I typically use for my paragraphs and for my written sort of my text, my paragraphs. And for headlines or titles, I tend to use Roboto. Why am I stuck here? I went to the wrong folder. Focus. Okay. So this time I'll try my title font because it'll probably work better as a title, or at least I'm more used to using it that way. It's not showing up here for me. It's probably because I have it activated through Adobe, and that's how I tend to use it. So I'm going to go ahead and find it so I can download it. Roboto Condensed Bold should be a free font, Google font. There we go. So I'll go ahead and find the bold version. Here it is. Select bold, download, and I will put this into same folder here. So if I hit open again, it'll bring me back to C, Windows fonts. I can copy that directory and paste it in here. So I make sure that this one goes to the right place. I can't save here. That's where they get installed probably. I'll just bring it into my downloads. And then once I install it, it should be showing up in that folder. Extract. And select all of them, right click, install. Do this for all. And there we go. All right. Just checking in on the stream, making sure everything's working fine. Okay, so if I go back over here and I search for my Roboto, still nothing, huh? Refresh. Roboto. All right, one more try, and it's Montserrat. Okay, it's Montserrat. And I'll go with Montserrat Medium and make the other one the same now. So that means I have to resize it a little bit. I should be using the same font size, but instead I'm just kind of scaling it, which is fine. It's 3D, and I'll just eyeball it. The perspective's throwing you off. It's fine. Okay, so now I'll go with the word destruction first. So I kind of know what it is that I want to do with that. It's a bit more complicated than what I want to do with creation, but I'll go ahead and go with destruction. And what I'm first going to do is create more character spacing. So I just go down here and increase the character spacing for destruction. So So I can move it in, kind of align it with the end of the word of, maybe a little bit more off to the right, maybe have this go off a bit more to the left. Align this with is. Okay. Next, I will make this font a different one. So something a bit more bold, maybe like if I have a Helvetica bold. I don't have Helvetica. What's similar to Helvetica? Verdana. I'll do a Verdana bold. Nice. Increase the size of the font. Maybe bring in the character spacing back a little bit. Not 1.5, but 1.3. And there we go. So I can make it larger. And now this is where I'm going to duplicate it with Shift D, escape. So it snaps to the original spot, hide the original. And I'm now actually going to transform this by hitting right click, and turning it into a mesh. So I'll go ahead and do convert to mesh. All right. So I can see over here what's happening in 3D to the actual word. So what I should have done, which is fine, but I'll do it here. I'll hit solidify and add a thickness. So it'll kind of extrude it. Oh, it's tweaking the T. So I have to undo when I turn it into a mesh. I have to first extrude here. There we go. To give it just a little bit of depth, really. And now I hit right click, convert to mesh. So that's solidify. If I were to use it now, it's doing something a bit different. That's not quite what I want from it, but essentially what I'm going to do with destruction is just kind of play with a combination of modifiers and see what ends up being interesting, right? So I'm going to do a few things here. I'll first do a subdivision. So without the subdivision, if I turn it off here and I hit tab, you see here that when I converted this to a mesh, it basically gave it a whole bunch of faces. So you see D and S, U and C, everything that's curved has a bunch of faces, and all the other letters don't quite as much, right? They're more diagonally or blocked out. So what I'll actually do is I'll hit tab. So I go into edit mode, hit A, right click, and I will separate by loose parts so that each letter is now on its own, so that I can select, oh, it actually even separated the top parts, which is not great. It's not exactly what I wanted. That's all right, because I can just select that letter and hit Control J to join those back together again. The reason I'm doing this is I want to do a decimate modifier onto these letters so that I can get rid of some of those unnecessary curves. So you'll see here, I'm not sure why I can't quite zoom in, or I'm having trouble zooming in. There we go. If I zoom into the letter D, you'll see here as I increase the angle limit on decimate, it's taking away more and more faces. So, but as you can see, it's actually taking away faces and breaking off and creating holes in the mesh, right? That's because even though I joined that top part of the letter to the rest of the letter, it's not actually joined. I gotta hit tab, hit A to select everything. So in edit mode, everything's selected. I'm in vertex mode so that I can right click and I can do merge vertices by distance and then make that distance really, really small. Like that small. Actually, this might even get rid of a step for me because I can do a certain amount of distance where it takes away some faces without distorting the letter too much. So that actually seems like a good spot. All right. It looks a bit broken up, but that's more or less what I'm going for. So I'm actually gonna use that method instead. So join up all the parts of the S, tab, A, right click, Merge vertices by distance. The same distance is saved from before. I'll go ahead and keep that. Do that for all the letters that have a curve. So the R, Control J to join, Tab to go into edit mode, A to select everything, right click. It seems like the stream on Twitch isn't quite working, but YouTube seems to be doing fine. That's frustrating. I'll have to figure out what that's about later. So merge vertices by distance. Okay. Merge vertices by distance. And I got two more letters to go. C and O. All right. Oop, I didn't join. There we are. Okay. So that broke up my letters a little bit. I'm going to go back to joining them all together. And now when I hit tab, okay, we can see there's still a lot more edges on the curved elements, but it's going to have to be that way for them to kind of look like a curve, but it's not as drastic of a difference as we had before. So now the modifiers will play a little bit nicer, more evenly. So besides the subdivision, I'll go ahead and use decimate. So they're kind of, I just introduced decimate to try and fix what I just did, but use a different method. So you might think it's a little bit counterintuitive to use something that adds faces to then use something that takes away faces. But if I set it to UV, UV is actually too clean here. I'll keep it to something sharp. So actually adding faces here with subdivide and then using decimate to take away, it doesn't seem like changing their order does much. Oh, I wasn't even previewing what the subdivision was doing. So now we bring back subdivision. We can see that there is a difference between putting that before or putting that after. So I like how choppy they end up looking. I wish I could, that's not bad. Maybe accentuate that a bit more. The N is looking really cool once I push that pretty far along, although the R loses its shape. So maybe I do want to separate these again. So now that I have the modifier applied and I hit tab, A, right click, separate once more by loose parts, right? Now I can control what the modifier is doing for each of them individually. So if I click on the R, I can bring that down so I get that edge back. If I click on the N, I can bring that up so it breaks up that way. The O, there we go. The O, I'm not quite sure what to do with it. I like that. Or just kind of, or maybe just keep it round but blockish as it is. The I has nothing going for it. Maybe I'm taking too much time here per letter, considering I'm going to replace these. But yeah, let's move on. So it's kind of just helping me stylize this. What's going on with my mouse? Ooh. I'm freezing up for a sec. Give my computer a moment. Why am I freezing? That's weird. Hmm. All right, well, I don't have time for that. I will kill the program and reopen wherever the autosave left off. In any case, I just wanted to introduce. Well, that's not it. Cover autosave from 4 minutes ago. There we go. All right. I'll select that mesh, stretch it in the y-axis. That's pretty nice. I don't want to make it so overbearing. I'll stretch it a bit more, have it take up more space. Cool. All right. Now what I'll do with the word creation, I'll stretch that in the Y. And then overall, have that be a bit more prominent, more elegant than destruction. Again, I'm focusing here on composition, like how much space I want things to take up and where I want them located. So maybe destruction, I'd like to put a bit more centered and towards the bottom of the page. And creation right there. If it's still a text element, I want to play with having more character spacing as well. Nice. Let's just put that right. I'm liking creation and destruction centered. Maybe if I make these a bit, yeah, I am liking that better. Yeah, that's actually working out for me. Maybe moving everything a bit up. So because we are playing in 3D, it's not just moving up. It's kind of a bit of fidgeting because creation and destruction are way back here. Maybe I want to bring creation higher up so that it glows a bit brighter at the camera than destruction will. And this allows me to sort of manipulate how the light will ultimately affect each one. So in terms of composition, I'm happy where this is going. Okay. I think we're going to have that right there. And then we're going to go into rendered mode. And this is where beyond composition, I'm going to look at some lighting effects. So with creation, I want to create this neon effect with it. So neon will glow white in the center and then turn into a color on the outside. So what I'll do here is do Shift D in order to duplicate creation and hit escape. So it snaps back and move it in the Z axis. And I'm going to move it down negative 0.05 so that it sits just below the other one. So I can now either offset the top one into the negative right here, just a bit inwards. That's good. Maybe offset the other one a bit outwards. That's good. Click on the top one. If I go to the material and change it from a teal light, duplicate that and rename it a white light. Okay. And I will make that desaturated, so it's just white. So you can see that the light from the top letter is hitting the bottom letter and reflecting, creating that effect, right? I'll select the bottom letter and it's all the way saturated. If I make it darker, it's not really helping my cause. If I make it brighter, it turns too white. I think what I want to do is actually offset this letter even more inwards to make it smaller if I can. or make it less bright. Let's see if I can make it just a bit thinner. There we are. Yeah. And also less bright. We'll bring that down to about half. Yep. All right, so that's what I want to do to creation. And then for destruction, I'm going to open up here the shader editor. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this principled BSDF so I can bring in 2 emission shaders and combine them with a mix shader. And turn one orange, turn one red, orange, or even like a purple orange, purple red. Stick that onto surface. So only the orange is it's kind of mixing them. As you can see, if I move the factor slider over, one side will be orange, another side will be the purplish red, and somewhere in between it kind of mixes the two. So what I want to do here is move this aside and use a texture node for the factor. So previously I had used a noise texture. So scale will mess with the size of that. We also introduce a color ramp. So a color ramp will actually make the effect of the noise texture more prominent. If I see here, Control Shift click, so I could see the texture. You can see right there, the noise texture kind of has gray and white going for it. If I plug it into the color ramp and I push these two colors together, it creates a bit more of a contrast. So I can actually just kind of take the orange and then stain it with some red. So I'm gonna plug that right in there. You're gonna see how that's looking. Not bad. I think I want to take it away from purple and bring it more towards the red. Nice. And I can mess with the scale of the noise texture. I can mess with the detail on the edges. I can mess with the roughness of it, which is, I guess, different in a way from detail. And I can add distortion, but that is not what I want to do here. So I actually want to keep it a bit larger, a bit more detailed. That's good. Not bad. Cool. Okay. Now, it's looking really, really flat. That's because my sphere that does volumetrics, I added this the last session. It's just a sphere with a volume scatter texture, which adds a fog element to the scene so that you see the light sort of diffusing through it or hitting that fog. Now, an element I did introduce earlier that I was liking how it was working to light the letters was if I hit shift right click, I can switch the origin of where objects come in to wherever I click. So I'm going to click right under here and add a plane, rotate it so it's flat to camera, and then move it right under my text here. Make it smaller there. Cool. So it looks like it's underlined, and then I will shift click on the shift click on the blue letters on creation. So I can hit Control L, link materials, and have it give it that blue glow right underneath. That looks great. So I'm gonna duplicate that over. So I have one for the other phrase, and also stretch that with S. And I'm going to, I suppose I will link it to the destruction material. See how that looks. Yeah, the red is barely noticeable, but that is kind of the point. That's okay. think I'm going to make this material much brighter. So I can come down here to the strength of each color and I can bump up the strength of these. So actually I'd like to leave destruction more or less where it's at. I think that's all right actually. Every act of creation is first an act of destruction. I'm going to make every act of smaller. So it kind of matches the size of its first an act of. I'd like to do more modifiers on destruction so it doesn't look so choppy. Maybe explode. No, that's going to require me to create vertex groups and a UV map. And there's one already created, but that is quite a bit of explaining and work that I don't have the time for now. So instead, I will go to the solidify modifier that I was using earlier because it just does allow me to add some irregularities here. Instead of simple, if I do complex, there we go. That's looking more metal. But also less legible. So this is where I will explode. Now that I've added the solidify modifier, I'll hit tab, A, right click, separate by loose parts, exit out of it again, and give each letter its own solidify value. And I have to remember to join. Oops. I'm going to hide the sphere for now so it doesn't get in the way. I have to remember to join the letters that haven't been joined together before so that solidify performs. There we go, as expected. That looks really cool for the N. I really like that. So let's go with O. Just give it those sharp edges. Let's go with I. I think I just didn't join all of the rectilinear letters properly earlier. So let's see how that looks. The more I modify that, the less legible it's going to be. So I'm just going to give it a slight tweak like that. I like that angle that it's coming out with. Do it for T. Nice. Do it for C. Oh. Do it for C. There we are. Yeah, actually going in the negative is working better here. Doing it for U. Negative is probably gonna, yep, negative is working better. Negative values are working better in this scenario for the curved letters that I already worked on. Yeah. Probably has something to do with how the normals turned out with the way I was working. So again, the T, same thing with the other one. Just some angle, maybe a slightly different angle that I gave the other one, or more pronounced. The S, curved, so it gets negative. E, oops. E is only getting extruded more, although kind of not mad about that. Okay, E has to be really, really subtle. There we go, just kind of breaking. What if it goes negative? It just gets thick. So let's just add some angles into E. All right, and now D. We're getting through it. There it is. that is looking so much more interesting than it was before. Let's bring back the sphere. All right. Composition is working for me. So lighting is working very well now. I'm just gonna do one more thing for the ambient. And also I have this light here. I think I want to keep it where it was, because those lights are getting lit up very, very well. So I'm just going to add in a 2-point lights. So I'll go ahead and put in a point light over here. Make that much bigger and much brighter, and turn it teal so that I can just kind of get some glow in there. So may not be able to see. I'm gonna go ahead and hide the right side. Just deal with the left. So if I hide it away, you may not be able to see the difference on the screen up there, but if I bring it back, yeah, you can see it. It's just kind of diffusing, adding a bit more color to the background, so it's not just pure black. And I'll duplicate it over here. Did I duplicate it? Yes. And I'll put this one more off to the side, closer to the end, and put this one closer up to the top, almost like within the frame. And make this one a blood orange color. Bring that brightness up. All right. So now I've got a background glow going as well. I'm going to turn that way up so it spills in. Yep. Also for the blue, way up. Not so way up. More off to the side. Awesome. So now I've got this sort of gradient going on in the background. They're fighting for space. Not bad. All right, so we wanted to go over composition and lighting for this one with 3D text, and I'm happy with the results. The second time around actually looks pretty cool. I like the first time, but I think I like this one better. So I'll go ahead and place this into solid, 100% resolution. Let's hit render. Make sure I have my denoiser on because I'm going to need it here. Yep, I'm going to use optics though. I tend to find that when I'm using that fog effect, unless I do a whole lot of samples, which 4,000 is too much, I can bring it down to 2,000. It's still a lot. But I find that with the open image denoise, when it's a dark scene and there's like a fog effect going on, that you kind of get this weird, I don't know, it's like trying to do what it's supposed to do, but it creates this weird like wrinkled paper kind of effect in the areas that are poorly lit. So I end up using optics denoiser when I'm doing a scene like this, when there's areas that are really, really dark, I'm not getting enough light. All right. So it's looking very posterish, very rock and roll, very metal, but also sort of a bit techy. So, ooh, I have an extra destruction word in there, which I hid from the view, but I did not hide from the render. So I have to find that right here, disable that, and render again. Cool. So yeah, that's basically my approach to compositing and lighting. I mean, just little tips and tricks on how to manipulate text in Blender, and real simple, like how you can really use lights to your advantage in this sort of abstract way. This is all doable in something like Illustrator or Photoshop, but the fact that it's done here in 3D makes it, I mean, a bit more cinematic looking, and also gives you the ability to animate this, right? So There's a build modifier which allows you to animate how these letters can start being generated, which is a real easy tool to use. So yeah, for the next one, I think I'm happy where this has arrived at this point. So the next one will be more about how to transition from here into the opening scene, more about an aerial shot that I'll be working on. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for the highlights that'll come out of this clip and the highlights that'll come out of yesterday's session. And I will see you in the next live. Thanks for tuning in.